Okay, welcome everyone. Great to have you here in the Henry Sharp 1915 studio at Couse-Sharp Historic Site. And thank you for joining us for the, this is the last talk as part of the Weaving the New World exhibition. And I just want to say it's been an unbelievable exhibition. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. And what's been great is seeing the outpouring of support and interest for our textiles. And we really want to get more folks to see this. So please tell friends, especially locals, to come out and see this exhibition, because I do believe it's the finest collection of Southwest textiles that's been brought to Taos, at least in a long while. Perhaps since Taos Pueblo was a more active trade center, and we had everyone coming for thousands of miles in every direction for 2 weeks in September. Since then, this is probably the best collection. So I want to introduce to you all Irving and Lisa Trujillo, who arguably are, well, I don't want to say the finest because then I'd be dissing some other amazing weavers in our community, but they are amongst the finest weavers in our region by a long shot. So we're thrilled to have them and thrilled to hear more about the work that they do. And one of the things I just want to point out is that they have shared their passion, expertise with the next generation, their daughter Emily, who's doing amazing work. So that's really inspiring to hear, because one of our goals with this exhibition is to inspire folks that this tradition really needs to continue. And it is in fact fine art, not just craft, tradition, heritage, language, everything that it embodies. It's also fine art. So without that, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, my name is Irving Trujillo. I am a 7th generation in Chimayo. My father told me I was a 7th generation weaver, but I haven't found weavings prior to about 1830. So I don't know. My ancestor, the Trujillo person, is my ancestor. He arrived in Chimayo around 1750. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to just give an overview of the traditional styles, and then we'll show you the pieces. So right now we're going to do the slideshow at the beginning. But before I do that, I have to give you a joke. I wanted to know what the difference between a weaver and a pizza is.
Well, pizza can feed a family of 4.
That's correct. So anyway, okay, Lisa and I have started weaving as a couple in 1982, actually 1980, huh? Anyway, and we were in Albuquerque. I was working as an engineer, and I became interested due to weavers that I saw at the Spanish market. One of them is here today. Her name is Maria Rosado Wilson, and Juanita Lavadie. I really respect their work, and they influenced us in the early days. So anyway, we'll get to the history right here. The slide says churro sheep introduced in the 1540s. Basically, they came with Coronado, and it was the peasant breed out of Spain. So the Spanish government did not allow the merino sheep, which was the royal breed, out until later on. But originally they brought the churro sheep. Here in New Mexico, again, they were introduced by Coronado in the 1540s. They were well suited to the environment here. They brought them for meat and wool to feed the settlers, and the wool was, I think, a secondary kind of use for an offshoot of the use of the sheep. And later on, in the late 1700s and early 1800s, we see a lot of textile blanket trade in back out to California, Los Angeles, and also back to Mexico City and the Durango, right there where the mines were. And let me see, the replacement. Okay, in 1608, I'm sure if you listen to Juanita. Anyway, what I understand is that the Americans started killing the churro sheep off because they wanted to introduce the merino, which was a bigger fleece and it was more suited to commercial enterprise, which was happening back east. So a lot of the sheep wool was transferred from here in New Mexico back to the east. And then later on in the 1860s, it started to come back as a commercial wool. So let's see, revivals in the 1930s. Okay, so in the 1930s, there was the WPA project. My father was one of the teachers during that period. He was an instructor all the way through World War II, and he taught at the El Rito Vocational School in El Rito, obviously, and also at the Espanola High School later on. He wove for my uncle, his name was Severo Jaramillo, who started the shop in Chimayo in 1922. So that's getting into my father's generation. Okay, one of the things that the Spanish brought was the Spanish loom. And it originates in Morocco, into Spain with the Moors, and then back to the New World over here. I went to Oaxaca last week, and the looms are just like the ones here. And actually, they're like the old looms. If you look at this picture, I don't know if you can see it. There's side beams over here and over there. They're wide beams, like maybe about this wide. And the corners in the old Spanish loom were made out of logs, made with an adze, and they were mortise and tenon, the joints were really well constructed, and a weaver would stand at the loom when he's working, or she working, and there's various parts of the loom, which I'm not going to go through, but let's see. Anyway. Okay, so the design styles, I'm just going to review. We have jerga, which was used for carpeting, usually made in narrow strips and then sewn together. They're usually black and white in the early pieces. The sabanilla and colcha was used for sheeting material to make mattresses and also for embroidery. And you can see some of the sabanilla in the show over here, the showing of the Rio Grande weavings, like that. And then the old Rio Grandes, we call them old Rio Grande, and the tradition is called the Rio Grande tradition. I didn't call it that. So it was introduced by the Spanish, but it has touched the Native American and also the Anglo. So, and I'll get into that. But the Rio Grande setup is mostly stripes and very simple. The early pieces, if they had any stripes, they were used for blankets. It's called a frazada. So the frazada is the name for the blanket, and it is not Rio Grande. It's an old, we call them old Rio Grande, or the museum started to call it old Rio Grande, and they termed the tradition a Rio Grande tradition. And for me, it's just a Hispanic tradition that originated and then it developed. So over here, this occurs in the late 1700s into the early 1800s, and about 1838, 1840, there's records of 10,000 blankets or frazadas going to back to Mexico City on the Camino Real, and there's 20,000 blankets that went to California. Now, I figured out how many weavers and spinners and dyers it would take to produce 20,000 pieces. And you couldn't do it with the amount of weavers that have been found in the census, there couldn't have been that many weavers to produce that many pieces. So, but the frazadas, they started to use indigo. So when you go to the show, a lot of the blankets have indigo in them. These were trade pieces, and the pieces dyed with indigo, or with yarn dyed with indigo, were worth more than just a plain wool piece. So I grew up with just plain white and dark wool pieces, and they were used as blankets. My first encounter with a blanket is, I'm shaking because I'm nervous. So the blankets, my first encounter with the Rio Grande blanket or the frazada was at my aunt's house. And we used to go to her house on Christmas break. We had a break from school for 2 weeks, and we'd go visit and stay with my aunt and my grandmother. My aunt took care of my grandmother. Anyway, she used to put, at night, she had a fogon, which is the wood-burning stove, and she used coal and kerosene, not just wood. And so it could get pretty smelly. Anyway, what she would do when we were ready to go to sleep, she would put out her mattress. She'd go in the back room and pull out a mattress and put it on the floor. And then she'd put a sheet on top of the mattress, and then she'd tell us to lie down. And after we lie down, she'd put another sheet on top of us, and then she'd go in the back. There was a crib in the back where she stored all the blankets that they had, she used anyway, they still use them. And so she would bring one blanket and put it on top of us. Then she'd go on the other side, get another blanket and put it on top of us. And blankets are around 6 pounds each. And then she'd go and get another blanket. And we'd have to say, no tantos, no tantos. And that means not so many. And or not so much, but anyway. And then after we got the blankets dropped over us, she started to start a fire in the fogon. She would stoke the fire with coal, and then she wouldn't put kerosene really, but the coal smelled pretty bad. And our mattress was like 3 feet from the stove, so it got really hot. And that was my first encounter with weaving. And my dad, later on, he said, "Oh, we've been weaving for 7 generations." And I kind of wondered, at that time I was 10 years old, not even 10, I was probably 7 years old. And it didn't occur to me how important the weaving was to our family. I didn't really start weaving until 1965. My dad, he was when my sister left, her bedroom opened, and she started working at the restaurant in Chimayo, Rancho de Chimayo. And anyway, she left her bedroom open. And what happened is that my dad put his 60-inch loom, so about a 5x5 loom, and the loom looked just like the loom that I showed you over here. Is that the last chance or not? Anyway, it was a box structure, like the old Spanish looms. The beater, which is the thing that beats the thread through to the material, it was hinged on top. So later on in the 1930s, the loom started to be hinged at the bottom. This was an introduction by the American looms, which came about in New Mexico at that time, around the 30s. So, okay, and then, so that's the frazada. That was my story. The Mexican style, the saltillo sarape, you will see in the next rooms over here. They are the most beautiful pieces, the finest pieces, tapestries that I've seen in the world. But I haven't been all over the world. So anyway, you can see the form a little bit on this piece. It has the large diamond in the center. The background is made up of usually elements. Sometimes they're element chains, which means that the elements are connected to each other in the chain. And there's different types of chains. There's one that goes out from the center to the side border, and then there's another kind that's a vertical background. And those are the 2 kinds. There's 3 kinds. And then there's a scattered element, what I call a scattered element background. And basically the designs are scattered out on the background. So that's, and this occurs, well, the Bazan brothers come in 1807 to New Mexico, and they were commissioned by the governor, and the governor wanted to improve the industry. So they must have had some kind of industry, or they didn't have any at all, because he requested two masters to come and improve the tradition. So tapestry, which is how the designs are made, were introduced around that time. There's one piece in the museum collections that is dated to about 1800, early 1800. And that's the earliest piece that I've seen, the Saltillo, Rio Grande Saltillo. So I'll talk about the Rio Grande Saltillo. The Trompas Vallero, Juanita's family is the master. This one, there's a piece that my dad called the Trompas Vallero, which has the 4 stars in the corner and 1 in the center. And there's 2 types of borders. There's a zigzag border, which you see in this piece. You can't see, but I'll show you another slide. And then I'll talk about colors too. So, and then the last thing to be developed was the Chimayo light. And I will be talking about that. So go ahead. Okay, so here's the frazada. 5 or 7 bands. I've seen some with 9 bands, so it's just usually an odd number. So a lot of times there will be borders inside these symmetrical borders. Not symmetrical, but design borders, the same design. There'll be stuff in the middle where the white, plain white is in over here. So it's a little bit more complex. The double woven and seamed, I took out that slide. Anyway, the double woven piece is a type of weave that's constructed on the loom with a 4-harness loom. And in that weave, I'm going to put the microphone down, but I'll raise my voice. So in a double weave piece, the weave goes, it's woven in 2 layers. And one of the layers is connected on one side, and the other layers are free. And when the old piece is around 24 inches around there. But when you fold this piece out, it makes a blanket-sized piece. Most of those pieces were mostly just stripes. When the tapestry came in the early 1800s, they start to put designs within the stripes, and the only way you can do that is to weave 2 separate pieces and sew them together. So that's the other construction of the Rio Grande blanket. Okay, yeah, so these are examples of the Rio Grande trade blankets. The one on the left is more common. This alternating indigo and black design is called the moki in my family. It's something that uses indigo and black wool, and then it's usually separated by white bands. So you can see the white bands that separate the stripes of those. And after 1800, you start to see small elements within the stripe. And this is, I think, a natural progression of a weaver learning small elements and then putting them in the stripe. Later on, there's other pieces that have more complex designs in the stripe. The diamond, I haven't seen that many with the diamond, but I have that example here. But you can see, oh, anyway, go ahead. It's okay. So the next style is the Saltillo. And you can change it. Okay, so the Saltillo, you can see these Saltillos, they have the border on the outside, and then the end of the border is made up of stripe. It's done with a stripe to begin the piece, and then usually the border is repetitive, goes from one end to the other. The interior, like I said, there's 2 types. There's a radiating type, and then there's a vertical structure. And so these backgrounds started to show up at that time. A lot of the Rio Grandes, they have a diamond that closes up before it opens up again. So, and the colors, a lot of the colors, again, with the trade was indigo, black, and white. The right-hand piece over here, it's indigo and black and natural wool. It's a very interesting piece because Mark goes into slave blanket or the servant blanket, and this piece has a continuous warp. And by that means that on this piece, the warp comes inside the piece, and at the end of the piece, it's cut off. So you end up with a short warp. This piece the warp goes all the way through, comes out and goes down and then goes back in. And it goes on both sides like that. So it really is a kind of an interesting make on whether it's woven on a Spanish loom or a Navajo loom. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so the territorial period is 1846 to 1912 when it becomes New Mexico becomes a state. And what happens is the train starts coming, but before that, go ahead. What's introduced, I don't know what the earliest pioneers are.
Laura Fisher says there was an early series of them that seemed to come up from Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I have, but I don't know the Mexican. But you can see this is a bigger picture of the piece I had before, and it has the 8-pointed star. The colors on this are aniline dyes. The aniline dyes came in, it was invented in Germany. I don't know if it was invented back east. But anyway, it was invented in 1857, and 3 years later it shows up in New Mexico as a packet dye. And the packet dyes were like red dyes that you put in the washing machine and you dye whatever kind of cloth you have. That was done with a lot of these pieces. I call these pieces with the pink bubblegum pieces because it has bubblegum. And so I've seen a lot of the bubblegum yarn used. And then the red and the yellows. Go ahead and go to the next one. And then you can see these pieces are done with the commercial yarns like that. This one only has one piece, one star in the middle. There's some other ones that I'm not explaining here, but you can see this has the border, the zigzag border on the outside. And there's several rows of zigzags or straight lines that occur in a lot of valleros that were commercially made. The one on the right is another border. It's called a tulip border. So the elements here on the side are made up of the little tulip elements. They're connected with the same color, so you really can't see them, but they are there. And you can see the background in this one has the radiating structure from the center out to the border. Again, the form is what my dad calls trompos vallero. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. Okay. So in 1860, around there, Julian Gold started. He was the father of Jake Gold, and he started a mercantile shop where the old, I think it's still the old curio shop in Santa Fe on San Francisco Street. Anyway, this was in 1960. By 1980, his son Jake Gold had taken over and changed the mercantile into a curio store where they sold Navajo, Pueblo, Mexican, Spanish, and I'm sure there's other cultures. The globes with the tarantula inside.
Yeah.
And he's also, there was a story that he had the spurs of Cortez, one of the spurs. So anyway, okay, go ahead. Okay, so a lot of the early Chimayos, which started in 1880 and later, they are very simple in design. They are usually, the old ones usually have a stripe that's closer to the border or the end of and the bottom of the piece, the top and the bottom. A lot of times they would have a chevron. Sometimes they would have a whirling log, a rolling log that looks like a backward swastika until you turn the piece over and it's a Nazi swastika. So, but the rolling log is found on a lot of early pieces. The other thing that is found, go ahead, is the candlestick. So a lot of the Chimayos have the candlestick coming out of the side, and these kind of simulated the border of the piece. And you would see these candlesticks coming all the way out to the center, but they were spaced. There was more candlesticks. This only has a few, but you can imagine the piece with a bunch of these. It would look like a border, but it was a lot easier to weave. The philosophy of Chimayo weaving is to weave as fast and simply as possible and make it look complex. And that's very difficult to do. Because if you, okay, the one on the right, you can see the feather design. It's really neat feathers. And you can see that the designs are spaced out. They're not one cohesive design that dominates the center. This one on the left has a small chevron in the center, and then two smaller designs like that. But a lot of the early Chimayos are red, black, and white. So it's cardinal red. The yarn company that we use in Chimayo, which just quit 2 years ago, had been used since 1898, and they quit 2 years ago. So we had to find another source of wool to keep weaving Chimayo blankets. Go ahead. Okay, I'll go ahead to the next one. Okay, so these are Chimayo blanket. The Chimayo blanket didn't become standardized until 1920. And at that time, there were 7 dealers in Chimayo, and they got together and signed a document that basically specified the placement of design in the piece and the amount of tapestry in the piece, like that. And they also standardized the pay for the weaver. In other words, there was a lot of weavers that didn't have other jobs that worked for the dealers weaving in the Espanol area and the Chimayo area. And if you can look at this piece, the format, you can see the stripe is further in, and the center design is usually a small diamond with a base. So the base, the one on the right doesn't have it, but the left one has a base, and then the diamond there. And then it has what we call wing structures, which takes the design out from the center, out to the edge of the piece to make it look more complex, but it's just a wing structure. The other characteristic are these little lines. I don't know if you can see them, but there are little lines in between the small design and big design. Those are called haspas. Haspa in Guatemala means ikat, and it's very interesting. I'll get to ikat in a minute. Okay, so anyway, I'll get to it in a minute. Go ahead, go to the next one. Okay, so now we get into my family. I'm related to, my grandmother's an Ortega, and my grandfather was a Trujillo. The Ortega and Trujillo families were arranged marriages in my grandfather's and my great-grandfather's generations. And that's why I have all the stuff that I'm not supposed to have. That's kind of like, people don't like it anyway. But, so in the Ortega family, there's 9 generations in Chimayo. And keep going, next. These are my grandparents over here. This is a picture of my grandfather. His name is Isidoro Trujillo, and Francisquita was my grandmother. And then you can see she's spinning with a malacate, which is a spindle. It has a pole and then it has a round whirl. And they would put it in a bowl. You can see the bowl here. And then they would spin by drying out the wool and then twisting the rod, the spindle. And go ahead. One of the things that was the lifestyle in my grandfather's age was they would farm during the summer and weave during the winter. So it wasn't a full-time job. And this doesn't happen until the Depression, really, and a little bit earlier. So the one on the left is a piece that my grandmother gave to my parents on their wedding in 1945, and it was given to her by her grandmother. And that would put it around 1830, around that point. So anyway, so that shows, they probably kept it because the stripes didn't match very well, but I don't know. And it has a little bit of indigo, so by 1830 they were definitely using indigo. The one on the right is what they call a frazada de boda, or what we call it, frazada de boda. And it's usually a wedding blanket with 3 stripes on the beginning, the center, and the other side. The 2 stripes on the end indicate the 2 parents of the child, which is the center stripe here. The middle is the 2 people or children. They usually aren't children anymore. Anyway, it has the 2 people to get married, and the center stripe is the new family formed. And this is one of the only designs that has meaning in my family. Okay, go ahead. Okay, we started Centinela Traditional Arts Studio and Shop in 1982. My dad had a building, and we started with a little sign on the road about this big, said weaving. And my dad converted a garage where we had the horse trailer and the truck and the tractor. He blocked up the windows and blocked up the openings and put windows there. And then Lisa and I put the carpeting in, and then we painted the walls. And that's how we started the shop. Go ahead. We've had the shop house lots of pieces. We've kept a database of who weaves the pieces, who the weaver was, the dyes, the style, and the date. And we have thousands and thousands of records from weavers that have worked for the shop. By working for the shop, most of the weavers do smaller pieces. My father and Lisa and I have always woven, that's not true. My father and I used to weave big, wide pieces. That's what by the time I was in high school, that's the loom I got. And then Lisa started on 20-inch material when she first started, and then moved to 36, and then moved to 48. And she'll show you the 48-inch wide pieces. But you can see pieces, the smaller pieces done by other people. Okay, go ahead. Okay, let me get to my dad. So I told you my dad was part of the WPA project, and he looks real regal in this stripe. I mean, this picture, and he is that kind of a person. And I have to tell you the story. So we had the shop, and we had the weaving room, and then 2 rooms that were showrooms, real small showrooms. And we'd have tourists coming in, and they'd ask my dad if he had a bathroom. And my dad had put an outhouse outside next to the building, and he would say, "Yeah, it's over there." So he would make the tourists go to the outhouse, and right behind him was his own bathroom. But he was the kind of guy like that. He was very boisterous, but he was very wise in terms of weaving. He really showed me a lot, designing philosophies, and his philosophy was weaving a one-of-a-kind piece. He wasn't saying you reproduce a piece over and over. You can make a lot more money doing that, but when you do a single piece, it's harder. Okay. These are some of his Chimayos like this. This is the one on the left is more in the 80s. It has big initials over here. The one on the right, he made in the 1940s, and it wasn't until the 60s that he put a little label that said handwoven and designed by Jake Trujillo. And so sometimes if you find a piece with a little label that he sewed on by him. Okay, go ahead. Okay, this is one of the Chimayo saltillos that he wove. He didn't like weaving this style before we started weaving them because he didn't want to be Mexican. There was a lot of discrimination in his generation, and when the United States came about, they didn't like Mexicans because Mexican was lower in status, whereas Native American was higher than the Spanish, than Mexican. So he never wove this style because it was developed in the Mexican period. Okay, here is the one of his versions of the Trampas Valero. Okay, then, yeah, it's okay, go ahead.
It's really hard.
Go ahead. That's my name, go ahead. Okay, so these are Chimayos I've done, they're very simple. It has, I didn't do hospice over here, but you can see it has the 3 designs, the 2 stripes on the outside. The one on the right is more abstract and more asymmetrical, and that's really all there is.
Are those pieces yours? Did you weave those?
Yes, these are all my pieces, so until we get to Lisa Trujillo. So the one on the left is just a different take on the Valero like that. And you can see the tulips right here in the border a lot better than in the other pieces where they were small. The one on the right is just an abstract version of the saltillo. And that's what I've done in a lot of my pieces. I've done abstracts or kind of developed the design to work around the system, which means the border on the outside, the stripes on the ends, the borders on the sides. The interior I've changed a lot. In this piece, it just has a figure with a shadow. This piece came to me in a dream about 3 months before my dad passed away. And this I view as me standing at the threshold with the shadow that I carried from all the previous generations. And I have to decide what to do with the tradition, because it's my tradition in my family now, and I had to determine what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to do museum replicas and just copy somebody else's work. Go ahead. Okay, the one on the left is a Fibonacci series, vertical and horizontal Fibonacci series, and you can see how it shades really well. The dyes are all natural dyes. These are all natural dyes. So the purple is cochineal, and then the dark red is cochineal. The yellow is chamisa. The blue and black, the black is natural, the white is natural, and then the blue is indigo. And the oranges are made with madder root, which was not available to my father's generation. Okay. Oh wait, let me talk about it. The one on the right, it's basically an abstract of time through my life. It was a midlife crisis, and I didn't know what, I wove the piece, and I got to this point, and I was gonna put some flames. And that day, my neighbor had tires catch fire. There was like black smoke everywhere, so I covered it up and wove something different. And I started. But when I did that, I didn't know what to do with the piece. So what I did is I stood still and I listened. And one of the things that I heard was the cars passing. And I started to think, well, the car is really important in life because, you know, when you're a young person, this is a generalization, but it's not all generalized. But in Chimayo, I think in Chimayo, you have the lowrider or the sports car, and then the midlife, we start to use the truck. So there's so many trucks in New Mexico, it's amazing. And then the fly shell, which is one of these designs, and within the stripe, for me it means death, which means technology will, that's just my view, it will determine our future, including death. But anyway, here's the dove, which is after death. And I was raised Catholic, so the dove meant peace, and it also meant afterlife. And so over here, I have two birds talking to each other. There's a little tree there, and they're talking to each other, and they're asking one another, what did you do in your life? And so this vereda, it goes into peace and comes down on the other side, and that's what the piece was all about. But the piece over here, this is a saltillo again, has the diamond in the center, the border. I put a border on the top and bottom of the piece. I think my dad started to do that as well. But it has the Chimayo design right here in the two ends of the diamond, and then it has three circles over here. They have profiles. You can't see it maybe from there, but they're profiles of three persons. And those are the people that started our shop. It's Lisa and my dad and myself. And that's what, I forgot what I called it. Anyway, good man. The one on the right, we were asked to judge a American Tapestry Alliance show, and I was weaving down here. I didn't know what I was doing because I never know what I'm doing. And then I had seen a drawing of it was a jaguar and a wolf, and it was being drawn by a goddess, and she was in a chariot. Basically, the leopard had rein around its neck, and it showed the jaguar looking back. Anyway, so I did that for the top show. Anyway, and then over here, I have a little hummingbird and the flowers right there, which is from a Greek vase. Go ahead. Merino stuff. Okay, so there's a period of my life starting around 2010, around there till now, and I started using a merino silk in my pieces. If you go in the shop with the Rio Grande pieces over here, there's one orange piece that has a wool silk, and you can see what it feels like. This one, you can see the design. It's a little bit complex. I saw a piece that Mark Winter had that was commissioned by Maximilian for Napoleon. It's the finest piece I've ever seen in terms of design, density, and most of the piece was made up of gold, silver, indigo, blue, and cochineal red. And so this is the type of kind of designing that I took from that, and I put it in the in the piece. Anyway, when I got to the piece, I was kind of tired of doing all this complex stuff, so I really simplified it here in the center. And again, it's a trompas-bayero like that. So it's, and over here, it does have the tulips. They're going that way and then they go this way. And this is just it's close up of the piece. Okay, so this one is called La Huerta. La Huerta, when I was young, my dad would plant big fields of chili, and I was the slave. So I would help him hoe the chili, and when it matured, my dad and mother would dry the chili, or we would string it first. And on Friday night, my dad and I would go pick the red chili, and we'd come back to the house, and then we'd start tying them in groups of 3. And then the groups of 3 were twisted into a restrip form. So most of the ristros that you see nowadays, if you look close, they're crossed chili stems. And that's how we used to do on Friday night. And sometimes they would put a melon or watermelon inside. So when we got to the melon, we'd have watermelon or melon. And so I grew up with all this stuff. And my kids didn't want to do it. I didn't have a tiller. I couldn't do it by myself. The water's drying up now in late July. And chili needs water all the way through mid-August. So I didn't do that. I had seed that was generations old. And I gave it to my sister. My sister gave some to my cousin. And he still grows it. But now he's in his 80s and he's not doing it anymore. So I don't know, I can't say the future. So, okay, there's a guy reading a book or a Bible, and there's steps that go up to here, and then whatever, reading about the weaving, whatever, and then there's steps going up here, and it goes to the mountains, because the mountains provide all the water for the chili. These little dots over here represent the green, when it's green first planted, and then as it turns red, the chili turns red, the fields start to look red. So, and these little stripes, you can't see them, they're little 3 stripes, they represent the ditches, the acequias that the water comes from. This piece, I started working with clusters. And so I started working with clusters and developing elements in a cluster form rather than a uniform symmetrical pattern type thing, because I wanted to look at texture, because these things have a lot of texture. And so this little part right here is the cluster that I started working on with the pieces. There's another slide later on I'll show you. And this just has a zigzag border. These are all acid dyes. They're all wash fast acid dyes, because I have most of them. How much time we got? Anyway, I don't need much. Okay. Okay, so anyway, this is another piece of wool silk. You can see it has the purple and the yellow and the orange. The reason I got these colors, we had a job, we were working for this company, and they wanted me to match colors. And I hadn't had experience with the acid dyes with wool, but this stuff was 50% silk. So I was having a hard time hitting the color right on, because wool silk takes the dye at a different temperature than wool. And so it's hard to pinpoint the dyes. So these were samples that didn't work for the company, and I ended up with a bunch of wool. So that's why I started doing these things. The indigo, one on the left has indigo for the blues. And that's about it. Go ahead. The one on the left is what I call a Saltillo shroud. And again, it goes to my father's lack of weaving the Saltillo due to being Mexican in orientation. And I had the drawing, and this has drawing. Anything with a curve, I'll have drawn on a piece of paper, and then I'll put it in the loom. The little ribbon here, I came up with the concept of the Pillsbury Doughboy, and it has like that. So I kind of did that, but when I got to here, I realized that I wouldn't make a complete turn, so I cut it out and then did some other sketches like that. This piece is these contained real gold, it's 24 karat. So I started using gold, I forgot to mention the, I had some test pieces that I did to learn how to use metal thread, because metal thread, when it bends, it kinks. If you ever, anyway, so I had to get the thread turned around in the design so that it wouldn't have a loop or anything. And that was something I had to develop. The one on the right is called Piñata, and it has basically the ribbons kind of thing. It has 4 evangelists, the oxen, the lion, the eagle, and the angel. And it represents John, Matthew, Luke, and who's the other one?
Mark.
Yeah, okay. I forget all these things, and I should know, but I don't. Anyway, so I was researching. I had a design in form of a gargoyle, and the gargoyle. I was trying to find something on what gargoyles look like on the internet, and I found some, but then you got into like. For some reason, I got into Luke, Matthew, Mark, and John, and I learned about the representation with the animals and the other figures. And then I delved deeper into that subject, and I found out, and one thing that I read is that the Vatican is still talking about the Immaculate Conception. They haven't determined whether it is or isn't. This is in the Vatican. I don't know if you can believe everything that's online, but I found it interesting. Anyway, so I have a parrot over here, and the parrot doesn't have any tail feathers. The tail feathers are small. They don't have a real long, like parrots do. And the parrot usually gives the message from God, but what is he saying? Oh. So because they didn't have the tail, that represented the controversy about the Immaculate Conception. So they were kind of without truth. Anyway, I won't say that. Okay. Okay, ECOT texting, go ahead. So the ECOT, I started to learn about ECOT. The first ECOT I saw was Maria Vergara Wilson and also Teresa Archuleta Sego. And they had it at the Spanish market, and I became interested in ECOT. I was going back to Albuquerque from Chimayo one time, and I thought about, Nora Fisher, who was the curator of Textiles at the International Folk Art Museum, she gave a lecture, and I went to see it, and she was an expert on Indian fabrics. And I saw one of the slides she had was a weaver doing one thread, and then they had another weaver weaving the border on the edge. And I started to realize that there's tapestry on the edge and ECOT in the middle. And so I started thinking about how it would happen. Anyway, after several things, I'll show you. Anyway, what I did is I made a jig with nails spaced at 1/8 of an inch, and then I spread a string back and forth to represent going out one thread every 1/8 of an inch vertically, and 1/8 of an inch going this way. And then I spread a string around it. I drew a cartoon, before I spread the string, I drew a cartoon on a piece of paper. I'll show it to you later. And the first one I did was a dove, and this is a spider right here. And it has 2 colors. I'll show you a little bit later about that. So go ahead. Okay, so this is what the piece for the ECOT looks. It has the bird here, and you can see it has the bird here. Again, it has the Vallejo influence, and it has the Saltillo influence right here. This was my midlife crisis. No, this was the crisis I had in quitting engineering and going to weaving, because that was a big decision. I was leaving a good job, and I don't know if I do it now, but anyway. So this came to me in a dream in Dodge City, Kansas, and it was amazing. It had earth represented by a serpent. It had the flame, fire. The bird represented air, and then the water was represented by the border over here. So it had the 4 elements, and I wove it. Anyway, it stayed in the shop for about 2 days, and it was lost. I didn't write down. I did write down the lady's name, but I took a very, preliminary picture of it. So, anyway. I wanted to find it again. I tried to find the lady and I couldn't. And I looked for her family and everything, but I didn't. Okay, go ahead. Okay, the one on the left is the weavers, which are the birds carrying the tradition. So the tradition has the spider in here, and then the tradition is not stagnant. It moves, it changes color, culture, like that. And so the background is made of random elements, and that represents the movement of the tradition. And the weavers are carrying the tradition forward. Although, I won't say that. Okay, this one went to the Museum of American History at the Smithsonian. The one on the right went to the Museum of American Art in the Smithsonian. And it has the other ikat design like that. So it's kind of a broken up diamond with the subfield. Go ahead. And it has a vallero too. Okay, so this is the process. I have a sketch right there, and then I make the jig with all the nails, and then go ahead. And then what I do, I have a guide thread like that, and I put a group of threads together with the guide thread. So when I take off that thread from this frame, it's marked with a design on it. And I take it off, and when I unravel the thread and I put it next to a group of threads, I transfer the mark to the other threads like that. So this piece, that design that I just showed you, has 1,600 resists. Took me a complete year, a month to finish the piece. And this is how, there was a certain mechanism I did with it. Go ahead. Okay, and after the resists are placed, then I have to dye, and usually dye in indigo. And then on one on the right shows you the spools that come off the skein holder that I have to keep track of the beginning and end of the strings and for each design. Okay, good. And this is what the design looks like in the weaving. So you can transfer the design without doing tapestry, but it's a dyeing technique. So with dyeing indigo. Okay, this is a piece I did with this is a unbalanced twill, which is 3-1 twill. And I put tapestry in the twill with and then I have a border right here, which the warp was a shifted weft, shifted warp. And by shifting the warp, I made a kind of horseshoe shape like that. And when I wove it, the warp had the ikat. And on one side of the piece, I could see the white ikat design, but on the other side of the piece, because of the weave, I couldn't see it. And I could see the tapestry on the other side, but I couldn't see the ikat. The one on the right is the double weave. Remember I told you about the 2 layers, and it has the ikat. Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. So these are some small tapestries I did for designing for the wall, which were actually designed for the wall, which is a new use instead of a blanket and all that. Go ahead. Here's some more, and that's it.
I just want to say it's not that easy to figure out when you need it. I will try to make it easier on you. Yeah, I'm Lisa Trujillo. Been with them since 1980, actually. We got married in 82. Well, we got married on our honeymoon. We went to the Wheelwright Museum in Santa Fe, and they had a Saltillo show. And I was so excited. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna be a weaver. I'm gonna do that. So a couple of years after I started weaving, I started spinning. And actually, Maria helped me with that too. Connected me with some of these fleeces probably. So I did the first one. This one is called Devotion, the pink one. And I did that one in 1987. So I started spinning so fine because that's what happened to me. I don't know if that happens to others better, but I just kept getting finer and finer, and I went, I'm going to weave Saltillo. So I did. So these two are both at 12 ends per inch. Normally we weave at 8 ends per inch. So this is finer. It's not nowhere near the fineness of classic Saltillo. God, even modern Saltillo is finer than this, but this is very detailed. So, anyhow, the first one is called Devotion. It has a little heart in the middle. That's 1987. The one on the other side there, I did in 1989. It's called Passion in the Web, and it did like these continuous lines. So I learned from this one that you should never disconnect the logic of the border from the background design. It was a very hard learned lesson. And it didn't turn out a total disaster. It did, I could make it work, but I decided from then on I was gonna connect those things. And that's what happens in Passion in the Web, is that all of the designs all connect out, and in the center, you can follow a line all the way in to the center where it is not visible. So Irving was telling you about his basic religious beliefs. That's my religion, is that there is something that controls and connects, and it's not visible. It's not knowable, but it's there and it's strong. Anyhow, so those are my Saltillos. That's kind of what I think of myself as starting with, although I did start by weaving lots of Chimayos, but this is kind of, in my mind, it's a lot of where I started from. So, the other way, there, okay, so I'm gonna put a bunch of my hand spun pieces here up front. This one is actually a pretty recent one. It's called Flipping Blocks, and it's very three-dimensional looking, and it was very humbling because it was very, very hard to keep track of the design. I couldn't catch my mistakes until I had woven 2-3 inches. So it was very painful. But it came out great, and it's still there. I get to look at it every day. The one on the other side is another version of the Saltillo. I do want to explain, my understanding of Saltillo was always, it has a border design, a background design, and a diamond. And so all my Saltillos are basically that. But they don't look like everything else. I do whatever background design I feel like, whatever border design works. So in this case, I used the flipping blocks of three-dimensional stuff for the border and the diamond, and they are in sync. I would have lost my mind if they weren't. And then the background design is just taking those parts of those elements and turning that into the background. I just like the other side. And another thing about the natural dyes, or the hand spun rather, is that I really have spent all this time kind of trying to find out how best to use it, because I spin in the grease and the color changes are kind of natural. It just is in the yarn no matter what. So a lot of my hand spun pieces are just trying to figure out what's the right width that really shows those color changes well and doesn't look sloppy or something. So anyhow, that's that one. And these are, so more of that idea of a border and a center diamond. Again, all hand spun. The one on the right here is, this piece is called the Verdant Spring, and it is, a couple of years ago, we got a whole bunch of rain in the spring. I don't know if you remember that. God, it seems like a nice thing. The old days, but anyhow, so those are the colors that were around when I finally got around to naming the piece. But again, it's a formal border, goes all the way around, and the center diamond. And I love to play with pattern. That's my joy. It's just fun to come up with new ways to connect elements up and create elements and stack them up and link them up, whatever. The one, the black and white one is called Fundamental, and the story behind it is that it really comes out of teaching. So what I'm always trying to teach is, okay, you've got an element, you have the standard approach in Chimayo is you've got serrated diamonds, you've got steps, right? You step out, angle in, step out, angle in. And then what you can do is change the number of steps or the size of the steps or how far they extend and all of that. So I had been teaching that. That was kind of in my head all the time. And so what I did with this piece was to do it from squares to circles. And by doing that, it goes from the square is one step, there are no steps, whatever, it's one shape. And then the second one is 2 steps to the same, and then 3, and then 4, and then eventually I get to the circle. So I did the same thing with the sort of curly Q things. I went from square curly Qs to curvy curly Qs, whatever. The other thing that happened with this was, so I called it fundamentalist, that 9/11 was like the very middle. I did that on 9/11. So, and I've kind of stayed away from just black and white since then, because that's felt dangerous anyhow. And that fundamental thinking is not safe thinking. Anyhow, we can move on. And so these are some Bayeros. This is sort of a weird interpretation of the Bayero star. It actually came from, it was post 9/11 when the war in Afghanistan, and these were kind of influenced from Afghan elements. And also the logo of the Denver Library, which I realized I couldn't actually use because it was probably not legal to do, but it's a little bit like that. The one on the other side is a little bit more floral, and on all natural dyes. That one actually is on a 36-inch lumen, not a 48. But I was getting to put these together, and I'm really proud of that one, probably that one. So maybe you can move on. So more ways to fill space that aren't influenced from Saltillo. It's just infinite how you can fill space. And I think Irving does a lot of different variations on that, but I do attempt to affect that too. One of my main roles in the shop is to use up leftover yarn. And so we had all these great colors, and anytime I just see a whole bunch of colors that just look good together, and they aren't going to work for a Chimayo or something. So I will find other ways to fill the space. And so it really has more to do with, how much of these colors do I have? So that's what this is. There's a lot of color shading. There's a lot of hospital designs that are actually happening in this one, the turquoisey one. The one on the other side is called Sum of the Parts, which is graded and, right, the sum is graded. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that's it. So, and that one is, I actually had sat on some of these colors for literally years because they were very difficult to use, too bright, just too bright. And I finally said, oh, look, I'm just gonna use those colors and use bright to its full effect. And so that's what that piece is. And it actually was revisiting a design that I had done before. These ones are, again, I just wanted to show just using up leftovers. This one is Noah and the Ark, right? And it's a dove. This one comes out of when my kids were little, and I could never remember what I was doing because I only got to weave like maybe a couple of hours once a month or something, and hire a babysitter. So it just kind of went off into outer space, that one. These other ones are, if you've got a whole bunch of colors and you've got, just want to use them up essentially. These things only have a little bit of tapestry, right? It's 2 colors going at the same time for the most part, or maybe 4. Anyhow, so there's a lot of just really fun, creative ways to do that. And I thought I'd put everything. Okay. And then these are the trauma pieces. So, because life is never peaceful. This one, the one with the cloud face is, it's called Consequences Fire. So in 2000, when Los Alamos burned, that was kind of not really on our horizon, but we were connected to Los Alamos. Our kids went to school there. Irving and I had both gone to school there. And eventually, and I know that you other readers did the same thing, like you gotta read about this. This is like, is this too big a thing to experience it? So this actually, so the bottom is the fire, right? And the mountains, the Jemez Mountains, from where we are. And then there was a thing, so in high school, when I went to Los Alamos, there was a 3-album record set album that was called Consequences. That was sort of an offshoot of my favorite band at the time, and it was just this wonderful thing. But 3 records, it had a lot of spoken word comedy. Some of it was this incredibly bizarro music. It was wonderful stuff that you can go look it up if you want. This is some of the art and some of the ideas that were in that album. So I connected it. This is high school mind, right? This is also going from geometric to curves, right? The angles to curves, and that cloud face. In this album, the weather destroys the world, which seems very real. And then so we go from the clouds to the wind face, and then up here are the toothpick trees. They call them black toothpicks, so the dead trees in the mountains. And then in there is the number 17, because 17 was the number in the logic here. There's a goldfish in here. He comes from Consequences, and same thing with pyramids and icebergs. It's all in that. You want to go listen to Consequences. Anyhow, the one on the other side there is another big trauma for all of us, which was COVID. It's called 1920-21, and it has everything that you remember from COVID. So things like trailers full of people, dead bodies, and tents, and masks, lots of masks, and lots of COVID viruses, and people Zooming. Remember, we all learned how to do it there. It's Zoom hands. So a bunch of Zoom hands. There's also people waiting in line, and later on waiting in line to get vaccinated, which, was hope. There's a hospital in the middle. There's just everything about it. All the doors are closed except the houses in the corners have open doors, because I knew that there was hope that it wouldn't go on forever. And to be honest, the only ones that up here I got to actually leave roofs, which I don't know why, but that was a great relief to put roofs on the buildings. So it was, you can see some adobe houses. You can see like every kind of house imaginable in there. So that was fun. It was, and this one went to the Museum of International Folk Art, and I'm really happy that that's where it went. So anyhow, we can go on. So I'd love to hit natural stuff, just beautiful things I see around these flowers, trees. The one in the middle is more the Chimayo, design form, but with imagery that is very much from right around our house. So there's what it looks like looking north, south, east, west. There's some horses in there. There's chili. There's donkeys and a tractor. So the henna is essentially down here, and the sangre is on the top. So that's home, that piece. Anyhow, don't have anything else I need to say about that.
Sorry. No, I looked away and the screen changed. So I was just saying, what's that? I didn't. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, but I don't know what you're asking, which, no, okay, let's go to the next. So I want to say that I've always done, unlike Irving, he doesn't have a whole lot of fiber art obsessions. I started with the spinning, started weaving and then spinning, I took up knitting maybe around 2000 or so. Now I do a little bit of crochet. I've got knitting machines, which I did that on, and actually one of the sweaters that I'm wearing. This thing is knitted from the rug yarn that we use, and it is a king-size bedspread, which we use all winter everywhere. And it's wonderful because we don't have enough heat in any of our house. And the thing on the bottom, I'm doing totes. I do all kinds of, and Mika is here, our seamstress, brings back lots of scraps from all the vests and coats that we make in the shop, which I hate to waste. We've never thrown out all that stuff. We've collected it for years, and other people in the past have made things out of it, but I decided that the piles were getting too huge and that I was going to invest in an industrial sewing machine. This was after COVID. I made masks during COVID with a regular sewing machine, and I thought, oh, I can do that. So anyhow, I've been piecing scraps together and making things for quite a while. So that is, I just wanted to throw that in there because I make a lot of stuff that gets sold at the shop eventually. Okay. So Irving had talked a lot about the prototypical Chimayos, the red, black, and white. And one of the things that I visit pretty regularly is prototypical. It's a different way of thinking than the kind of Chimayos that we've always done a lot of. You just have to sort of set your mind into a different place. And so I do one of these every couple of years. And then this was also studying old pieces. We were asked to do a lecture about WPA and weaving in the WPA era. There is a piece that Mark Winter has brought that's over there that is out of that. That doesn't look like these, but these are more coming from, there was a publication that they did that had all these designs that they expected people to weave. So this is my hands found and copying those designs, sort of. I mean, whatever. They weren't that exciting designs, but I liked, and I think that both of these sold like practically instantly. They're very satisfying designs. Okay, and most recently, and we brought one of these, is here. I've been visiting the old Chimayo. So I have, and it would take a long time to explain, but I have this idea of a project that I'd like to do that is to organize essentially the, God only knows how many pictures I have stolen of Chimayos off of eBay. Everybody knows. And yeah, I don't think there's any laws against it, although I'm pretty sure publishing them
I'm sure there are.
would be. And stealing the pictures, everything, yeah, I don't know, but I've got them. Don't tell the lawyer. I have all these pictures and I've been studying these old pieces and I want to make sense out of them. I want to make some way of thinking about who wove what when. So we've got, 100 years of these pieces and there are only a couple of people who might have woven them. They're getting old, so Robert Ortega and actually Richard and Carlos Trujillo down the road from us, who I am pretty sure can help me with this, but I need to try and make it so that they aren't sucked into spending months and months doing it.
That sure sounds like fair use.
There you go, thank you. I'm sure I should talk to a lawyer about all this. Anyhow, I want to try and figure it out. I want to get their help because I know that these guys know more than I do. But I have countless pictures. But one of the things that I also wanted to do was to take those and try weaving from them. So take some of the ideas that are in those. One of the things that I noticed that I could do is double up the hospice. So the hospice, instead of one round, which is how we've always done it, there are some that have 2 rounds. So we got together with some weavers in Mexico and they were doing 2-round hospice. So anyhow, it's probably something that comes out of Mexico. So anyhow, I've done one of these. This one is actually based on one of Irving's aunt's pieces. So I think that's it, right? The book, and Emily, I forgot Emily. So this is another one of the probably biggest projects of my life has been weaving a how-to book. So I'm not a book designer, but I've taught for so many years that I always had developed handouts over time, and that thing got bigger and bigger, and I finally went, it needs to be a book. So anyhow, it is a book. It's available at the shop. You can get it from off the website too. We ship them out all the time. Okay, next is Emily. I get to talk about Emily, right? Emily is, first I want to say, we have 2 kids. It's an older brother. He's not here, and he doesn't weave, and he, anyhow, wonderful guy, not interested in weaving, so I know he's like perfectly invisible to the rest of the world. He cares about the weaving stuff and not about Adam. Anyhow, this is about Emily, who does. She started weaving, I can't even tell you what year, but she had gone to college. She got a degree in a dual major in psychology and anthropology. She decided that, wow, she came from something that was an interesting and important cultural thing that was going to be lost. So she was going to come back and spend a year or something learning how to weave. So she came back and she did learn how to weave. So, and she liked it. So, and what she mostly really likes doing, so whereas when I started weaving, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to learn how to weave fast and do production weaving. She never liked any of that. But she did do a little bit of, smaller pieces. So see, these are some of her 20-inch pieces. This bird wound up being called Beaker. So, and she did a handful of pieces with Beaker in them. So that's those. She did not like production weaving, and I can tell you why, but I'm sure it'd be a deep psychological whatever. It's not in there to be a production weaver. So more of the birds, but it's not like she only did birds. Okay, are we running out of time? Okay. And then she moved right away to doing bigger pieces. Now up until now, she never lived in places with room for a big loom. And I don't think she wants to weave big pieces. And it's not an aspiration for her. But she will do them by doing 2 pieces seamed. And so this piece is not actually the first. This, I think, is the second one of those big complicated pieces. That one, was it Timeless New Mexico, Timeless Enchantment. So she picked up on all those wonderful sort of cliches of home, the Dewey houses, the howling coyotes, and but it is with Saltillo. Notice it has a Saltillo border and Saltillo diamond. So we hit that all the time. The one on the other side there is, it does have a Vallero star, so we call it, if it has that star, we'll call it a Vallero. And what she's done is start layering up the zigzags. and I can't tell you what's going on in her head because she's Emily. And, but she's gotten into this is complicated stuff. The logic of it is not easy. And she's doing this in 2 pieces and it seems. So she's doing one and then copying it again to sew it up. Yeah, she flipped it, right. So
What does she flip them? What does it look like?
I don't,
So she flips them vertically,
right.
so like a checkerboard. Kind of is a checkerboard.
So she's done a couple of them. So, yeah, the logic of Emily is she's different. She's very special. This is actually the first one of the 2 pieces, seamed pieces, which is still not a simple piece. It's a very complicated piece. The first one she did, what she didn't do at that point was have the patience to sew it up. She made us. I guess it's very evolutionary. Oh yeah. But this is the most recent one. It's called "Hurt Me Less," and actually like one of the other ones there, it comes out of a bunch of different things. A music video where she's picked the colors, and one of the previous ones that we just showed you, she had taken the colors out of a music video. She is a big K-pop fan, which is a whole nother thing. And there is a video called "Hurt Me Less" by one of those K-pop bands. But this one has everything to do with her getting a divorce. So there's a lot of that kind of pain. There's symbols of her and her ex and all of that are in here. But if you look at it, it's very, very complex. It is layer upon layer upon layer of different patterns. I think she said there's 7 layers of patterns at the height. Yeah, so she's a complex person. That's my kid. She's both brilliant and amazing, and I also say that while she was weaving that piece, she was approached. There was a dance done about her. So it was a dance company there were like 40 dancers on stage. It's I don't know, like a 45-minute, hour-long production. It's a big deal, and it is from Emily. They came and interviewed her while she was reading this piece. So this piece is sort of in that dance. There's it's a remarkable, amazing thing. It's called Lineage, and it is the Zeitgeist dance company. I think Zeitgeist is their company. The guy's name is Francisco Geller, and he's Gella, Gella. And I think to be, whatever, she's 33 and have a ballet done or dance, it's not ballet, it's modern dance, about her is an amazing thing. So I know she thinks we're just jealous of her, but not exactly. I got to weave. I've got to spend my time weaving, but she had a dance video. Oh yeah, she's down teaching today.
Where's the company, the dance company?
So he lives in Santa Fe, but he's been teaching. It's really more sort of a teaching thing. So there are professionals that he brings in for performances like this, and then others that are students. So he kind of, takes these students under his wings and really tries to help them become professionals. And they did, that's true, they learned this dance, they had like 2 weeks to practice it and put it together. But it was, my understanding is that he's really partnering with these people, and the students are, I think that since COVID, it's been kind of, they come in for different things over time, that he's working long distance with a bunch of people. So, and I think that's the last slide, is it not? Yay, okay. one pattern that's on top of another pattern that's on top of some. So it might interrupt it so that you can't see what's happening because this pattern is, she does sometimes have them integrate, interweave. But it's mostly layered, it's one thing on top of another.
Is she designed it ahead of time that way, or is it?
I don't think so, no, she doesn't, Irving does way more planning than any of the rest of us.
Okay.
But she does not,
Spontaneous.
she's not right that up.
Okay, wow.
I just wanted to say how happy I am that the switch was from engineering to weaving and not from engineering to pizza.
Thank you, we only eat pizza sometimes now because we're old and not good for us.
All right, well, thank you for coming. Definitely go see the show. There's another room over here, but I'm not sure if it's open, so.
Yeah, the galleries, those, will be open until 6.
Yeah, so just go through this door and go straight, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get to a Saltillo show from Mark Winter, who's the expert on Saltillos, and then the Rio Grande show is in the next, around the bend, right there. Yeah, and it'll be here till March 31st.
March 31st for the Mexican Saltillos, and the Rio Grande part of it's gonna stay up through the summer.
In the town.
That's good.
This is Cota.
The darker ones,
The dark